You know, we tend to think of giant global companies as these unstoppable forces, right? Especially in certain markets where it feels like they hold all the power. But what if a single person, a single consumer, could actually force one of these giants to sit up and listen? Well, today we're diving into a story that completely flips that whole idea on its head. Okay, so picture this. It's the Shanghai Motor Show, April 2021. You've got all the bright lights, the polished new cars, all that industry buzz. And then, out of nowhere, a woman climbs right on top of a brand new Tesla. She's wearing a t-shirt that says it all. Tesla's brakes don't work. She starts shouting. And just like that, what was a personal complaint suddenly explodes into an international news story.
Now, at first glance, this just looks like a really unhappy customer. I mean, we've all been there, right? But was this just one person's frustration boiling over? Or was she tapping into something much bigger, a powerful and honestly kind of surprising system of consumer protection that most of us outside of China have never even heard of? Okay, let's get into it.
To really understand what's going on here, we have to rewind the clock a bit. We need to go back before the big protest at the motor show, back to the car crash that started this whole thing.
So, it all kicks off in February 2021. There's a crash, and the owner is absolutely convinced the brakes on her Model 3 failed. She tries to sort it out with Tesla, asking for the car's data, demanding an independent investigation. But the talks just go nowhere. So, feeling completely stonewalled, she decides to take her fight public in, well, about the most dramatic way you can imagine. And this is where the two stories just completely collide. The owner says her dad was driving at a perfectly normal speed, around 60 kilometers an hour, when the brakes just gave out. But Tesla comes back swinging, releasing its internal vehicle data and claiming no, the car was flying down the road at almost 120 kilometers per hour. A classic case of he said, she said, or so it seemed.
But here's the thing. When people started digging into Tesla's own data, things started to look a little weird. I mean, take a look. The brake is supposedly slammed on right here, but for more than a full second, the car's speed barely drops. And then, get this, look at the timestamps. This last entry is totally out of order. It's inconsistencies like these that just poured fuel on the fire of public skepticism and made a lot of people think, maybe this data isn't the whole story.
Now this is where it gets really interesting. The protesters' demands for a full return and an official investigation weren't just coming out of thin air. She was actually backed by a really powerful legal framework that gives consumers in China a surprising amount of clout.
It's a law called Sanbao, which literally translates to the three guarantees. And it's a huge deal. For a whole range of products, this law legally forces companies to offer a repair, a full replacement, or a complete refund if something's wrong. And here's the kicker. A lot of the time, the choice of which of those three you get is up to you, the customer.
And the power this law gives you is pretty incredible, especially right after you buy something. In those first 7 days, you are in the driver's seat. You can demand your money back, a brand new replacement, or a free repair. It's your call. In the second week, you still get to choose between a new replacement or a repair. This puts the consumer in a seriously strong negotiating position right from the start.
And believe me, this system has been tested before. To really see how powerful it can be, we've got to look back to 2013, when another little company you might have heard of, Apple, learned all about Sanbao the hard way.
So back then, Apple's global policy for a faulty iPhone was pretty straightforward. They'd swap it for a refurbished or rebuilt unit. It was efficient, it saved money, but it was in direct conflict with China's Sanbao law. The law was crystal clear on 2 points. Any replacement had to be brand new, and the full 1-year warranty had to start over from the day you got the new device.
So retailers came up with this, let's call it a creative workaround. They would literally take the back cover off your broken iPhone and slap it onto a refurbished phone. Legally, they could then claim this wasn't a replacement, but a massive repair of every single part except the back panel. It was a clever little loophole to give you a refurbished phone and avoid resetting the warranty, all while technically staying within the letter of the law.
Well, as you can imagine, this back panel swap scheme was eventually exposed by state-run media, and it caused a huge public backlash. The pressure got so intense that Apple's own CEO, Tim Cook, had to issue a formal public apology to all of his Chinese customers and completely overhaul the repair policy to get in line with the law.
So, okay, we've got these incredibly strict laws on the books, but what's the trigger? What actually pushes them into action? Well, as we saw with both Apple and Tesla, the real catalyst, the thing that lights the fuse, is the explosive power of social media.
And there's a really clear, repeatable pattern to how this works. You can almost think of it as a pipeline. It all starts with one person posting a complaint online. If that post catches fire and goes viral, it gets amplified and grabs massive public attention. That, in turn, gets the attention of state media and official regulators. And once the government gets involved, they step in, demand compliance with the law, and the company, well, it doesn't have much choice but to fall in line.
Right, so when you put all these pieces together, you've got the strict laws, the viral social media outrage, and then the state intervention, you start to see a very, very different picture of what it means to be a consumer in China and a brand new reality for any global company that wants to do business there.
But here is the absolute wildest twist in this entire story. You would think that a massive viral protest about your brakes not working would absolutely crater your sales, right? Well, with Tesla, the exact opposite happened. After all that controversy in February, their sales in March didn't just bounce back, they skyrocketed to a record high. It's just bizarre. It's almost like all that intense negative publicity acted like a giant free advertising campaign.
And this really gets us to the core of it all. A single controversy, even a really big one, might not be enough to sink a popular brand's sales. But what it is enough to do is trigger this unique enforcement mechanism. It reveals a system where consumer power isn't really about boycotts, it's about activating the state. It's this formula, strict laws plus viral outrage equals state-enforced compliance, that creates this powerful accountability that forces even the biggest companies in the world to play by the rules.
So that leaves us with a really fascinating question to chew on. We're used to thinking about consumer power in terms of things like boycotts or big lawsuits. But is this model, where a single viral complaint on social media can directly trigger government enforcement, is this a glimpse into a new future for how we hold corporations accountable, not just in China, but maybe everywhere?